Like to call the May 1st, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, would you please call the roll?
Tom Anderson has an excused absence. Gary Turner. Mark Burton.
Present.
Dennis Murray.
Here.
I don't see Jenny Smithwick on Zoom or in person. And Caitlin Bodla.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. For the Planning and Zoning meeting of April 3rd, are there any changes to the minutes? Any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes for our meeting on April 3rd are approved. Moving on to public hearings, Resolution PZ 2024-008, granting a request for a sign variance to the area and number limitations for wall signs located on Soldotna Junction sub addition number 16, Tract B1 at 43843 Sterling Highway. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve resolution number PZ 2024-008, requesting a sign variance.
Thanks. May I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thanks. We have a staff report.
Thank you. So this is the first of the two public hearings that we have tonight. Let's see here. On April 11th, the city of Soldotna received a sign permit from, or a sign variance permit request from Fred Myers of Alaska. And it is for a variance to the allowable area and number of wall signs in accordance with our sign code. The application was submitted by Glacier Sign and Lighting representing Fred Meyer. And specifically, the applicant is proposing to replace, to install 3 new wall signs totaling 113 square feet in area. And they are also going to do some advertising copy change on some of their existing signs. And replacing advertising copy does not require a permit. It's basically putting new signs in an existing frame. So the only thing here for our review is the variance. A little background. Fred Myers has received 2 sign variances in the past. In 2000, a variance was granted for an additional area of 60 square feet to be added to their existing freestanding sign. Nothing in this variance has to do with the freestanding sign, just information. And then in 2005, a sign variance was granted by the Planning Commission for the installation of multiple signs in excess of the area standard. So again, while some of those signs that were previously in those variance applications, the copy will be replaced, again, not requiring a permit. The only thing here are the addition of 3 signs with a cumulative area of 113 square feet that actually requires the variance. So moving on to looking at our code, which begins, I believe, on page 12 of the packet. Title 15 is our sign code. It lists general requirements and visibility standards, and the proposed signs, again, are wall signs, and therefore are outside of any visibility triangle and have no issues with regard to visibility. The second part of the code that we looked at was requirements based on type of sign. This section 1508.040 looks at wall sign materials, their projection over public property, and their proximity to setbacks. And in this instance, all 3 of the proposed signs meet our standards for their construction. They're made out of acrylic and they comply with our building code. And there are no other issues with regard to setbacks. The next section of code that we looked at was Title 1508050, requirements based on zoning district. And in this section, as I noted earlier, a variance was granted in 2005 to increase the number and size of signs. The application considered in this review includes an additional 3 wall signs of various sizes. The first sign is 39.7 square feet, and that would be the bottom sign that you see up on the screen. The next sign is 23.5 square feet, which is the top one, I believe. And then the last sign is 25.7 square feet in area. The, the proposed new total of wall signs would have a cumulative area of 466 square feet, and the height of the tallest wall sign will not exceed 26 feet. Our variance process in Title 1508 does require us to look at a number of general standards and for the applicant to meet all of those standards. And the very first one is that the granting of the variance shall be in harmony with the general provisions of this code, the zoning code, and the comprehensive plan. Staff does find that the standard has been met. The objective of the sign code, as stated in our code, is to ensure fire and life safety, increase the effectiveness of visual communications, and avoid visual clutter, which is harmful to vehicular and pedestrian safety, property values, business opportunities, and the community's appearance. Staff also finds that the proposal meets the general standards of the zoning code and goals of the comprehensive plan, which include improving the streetscape of the highway corridors. The second standard of the variance for signs is that the granting of the variance shall not result in material damage to other properties in the neighborhood, nor otherwise be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. Staff finds this standard is met. Staff does not believe that adding the wall signs will be detrimental to health, safety, and welfare, nor otherwise result in damage to neighboring properties. The third standard is that the granting of the variance shall not cause conditions which obstruct the vision of drivers or pedestrians at intersections or crossings, and staff finds this standard is met. As noted earlier, these are wall signs and will have no impact on visibility or pedestrians. The fourth standard is that the sign for which the variance is requested shall be in harmony with surrounding buildings and properties. Staff finds this standard is met. The signs would occupy an otherwise blank portions of the facade and would be in harmony with surrounding buildings and properties. The signage as proposed would be proportionate to the size of the building. Variances have been granted in similar situations where large facades or the distance from the traveled way is greater than normal. Examples include Safeway, Sportsman's Warehouse, Kendall Automotive, Tanner Seafoods, and Dan's Automotive. This structure is set back approximately 350 feet from the traveled roadway. The fifth standard is that the sign for which the variance is requested in all other ways complies with the requirements of the code. Staff finds this standard is met. With the exception of the allowable area and number of signs, the sign meets all other requirements of the Soldotna Municipal Code. And the sixth standard is that proof of sales tax compliance with the borough, and we have received confirmation that the Fred Meyers is in fact in compliance with sales tax requirements. So the staff's recommendation to approve the 3 additional wall signs with a cumulative area of 113 square feet, and the passage of resolution PZ 2024-008. And that is the end of the staff report.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Are there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item? Yep. All right. With no one wishing to speak, the public hearing is closed. Are there any commission comments or questions for staff? All right. With none, I think we can call for the vote.
Mark Burton. Mark Burton. Oh, Mark might be frozen.
I did have one question, actually, a clarification. You mentioned 466 square feet total and then 113 square feet total. And I was just curious where the 466 came from.
The 466 comes from the new signs, the 3 new signs that are proposed, and the total of the existing signs that are already up there.
Oh, okay. So the cumulative total.
Right.
Thanks.
Mark said he's frozen and rejoining, so. Well, Gary Turner. You, Dennis Murray,
Yes.
Caitlin Bodla,
Yes.
and then Jenny, Charlene, and Tom are all absent, so we'll wait on Mark to vote
I wonder if he can vote
electronically.
or just like a comment.
Oh,
I think we need to
yeah.
Have a
have
verbal?
him, back.
Oh, he logged off. So.
You just need verbal? We call him?
It has to be on the record. We can call him as long.
Speakerphone, as long as it's through there.
Microphone.
Hi, you're back in the meeting and we just needed a verbal vote, yes or no from you.
Yes.
Okay, and you're welcome to stay on speakerphone is that okay?
It is okay if you can at all join by Zoom, please do. But this will, I believe, work in the meantime.
I'm attempting to reconnect as we speak.
Right.
Thanks.
We'll pause for a minute, let you do that.
Well, motion passed.
Mark, you're very important because without you, we don't have a quorum. So, but if it's okay with you, I'm gonna keep going in the interest of time, as long as you can hear me and we can hear you. The phone will be adequate, and if you can get on Zoom, that's even better. But
Yes, I appreciate it. I apologize.
No worries.
So I'll remain on the phone and attempt to get on.
yeah, no, that's great. Technical difficulties, so they just happen. All right, moving on to resolution PZ 2024-009, granting approval of a conditional use permit for a storage yard within the commercial district at 713 Cahill Lane. May I have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I move to approve P and Z resolution number 2024-009, granting approval of a conditional use permit for a storage yard within the commercial district.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thanks. And can we have the staff report?
Savati Rutov submitted a conditional use permit application for the development of a storage yard at 713 Cahill Lane in accordance with section 1710-400 of our code. The applicant is under contract to purchase the 7.44 acre property, parcel number 059-32125, where the proposed storage yard will be located. The zoning is commercial. Adjacent lands to the north are zoned rural residential and are both undeveloped, as well as hold single-family dwellings. Lands to the south and east are zoned commercial. Land to the south is a recreational lodge, and land to the east is vacant. Lands to the west are zoned both commercial and rural residential and hold single-family dwellings. The commercial district is intended to provide an area which is convenient, visually pleasing, contributes to the economic welfare of the community, and allows a wide range of general businesses and other compatible uses. Storage yards are listed in the conditional use section, whether such a yard is principal or accessory for the storage of building materials, impound vehicles, construction equipment, and machinery, provided such yards are site obscured from any street with dense evergreens or decorative fence or wall not less than 8 feet in height. The general standards for the commercial zoning district are met, as you can see on page 2 of the staff report in that table, for both minimum lot size, minimum lot width, and maximum lot coverage, as those are not requirements within the commercial district. And then for maximum building height and yard setbacks, there's no building present. Looking at the standards of the off-street parking and loan, so that was for the commercial zoning district standards. And then the next section of code we look at is for off-street parking and loading. Looking at those standards, the proposed storage yard is for a private storage only, and therefore there is no public parking spaces that are needed or required. This site will be served by a 30-foot driveway with access off of Cahill Lane. Cahill Lane is not paved, and so thus this is not required to be paved. All parking and loading areas shall be graded to drain stormwater away from buildings and shall not drain onto adjacent properties. And then looking at the standards for our landscaping code, 2 sections of code do apply, both for right-of-way and for buffer landscaping. This parcel and proposed use are unique in that both the street right-of-way landscaping and buffer landscaping are both required, and they overlap along the rights-of-way. It is staff's recommendation that only the buffer landscaping be required, as it is the more strict of the between the 2 codes. Buffer landscaping serves to separate, screen, and buffer adjacent land uses that may be different in their use and intensity than that may have an impact on the neighboring uses through the use of landscape plantings, fencing, or other appropriate features. Buffer landscaping shall be provided to separate all outdoor storage facilities regardless of the neighboring land use or zoning district. Our code in 1710-335 states general standards for landscaping trees. The caliper of deciduous trees shall be a minimum of 1.5 inch at chest at planting. Evergreen trees shall be a minimum of 6 feet in height at planting. Buffer landscaping beds shall be at a minimum of 15 feet in width along property lines adjacent to the affected district. A 6-foot high site obscuring ornamental fence approved by the administrative officer may be used in place of 5 feet of the required bed width or 1 row of required trees. Fences may not be used along streets or along rights-of-ways. The applicant proposes the full 15-foot buffer landscaping bed in addition to a 6-foot tall chain link fence with a gate that will provide security. With the proposed full 15-foot landscape bed along all property lines, no fencing is required. The 15-foot buffer landscaping bed shall be between the property lines and the fence. The trees need to be planted at a minimum of 20 feet on center. As an ornamental site obscuring fence is not planned to be installed, trees shall be planted in a minimum of 2 equally staggered rows. Native vegetation may be retained to count towards the landscaping requirement, and the applicant does intend to retain the native vegetation. The applicant proposes to install a chain link fence along all property lines. The fence, again, is requested in order to provide security for those stored items. Staff suggests that with adequate landscaping, it is possible to allow for the fencing along the rights-of-way and still meet the purpose of the code to provide an aesthetically pleasing commercial district. And then we'll go on to the next section of code for conditional uses. So as you've seen before, whenever we have a conditional use permit, there are 8 specific standards that must be met in order for the permit to be granted. And I'll go through each of those standards one by one. So the first one, and we just touched on this with the buffer landscaping, is the proposed development satisfies the specific standards associated with that conditional use listed in the code if there are any. Staff finds the standard is partially met. The Soldotna Code 1710-265C11 includes the following specific standards for storage yards. Whether such a yard is principal or accessory for that storage of building materials, impounded vehicles, construction equipment, and machinery, provided yards are site obscured from any street with dense evergreens or decorative fence or wall not less than 8 feet in height. As mentioned earlier, buffer landscaping serves to separate, screen, and buffer adjacent land uses that may be different in their use and intensity. So buffer landscaping shall be provided to separate all outdoor storage facilities regardless of the neighboring land use or zoning district. The 6-foot tall chain link fence as shown in the site plan, as the applicant plans to install the full 15-foot landscaping buffer, no other conditions are placed upon the fence as the fence is not necessary to meet the standards of buffer landscaping. And then the second one, the use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan and surrounding land uses. Staff finds this standard is met. The project is in harmony with the comprehensive plan and surrounding land uses. The property is also in harmony with the future land use map, which identifies this area as mixed use. Mixed use is intended to include a variety of uses to allow for a vibrant mix of development within the district. Light industrial uses may be allowed if they are compatible with primary uses. Staff finds that the proposed development is in harmony with the comprehensive plan and surrounding land uses. The third standard, the use meets the general standards of the zoning code and intent of the zoning district which it's located. Staff finds the standard is partially met. The commercial district is intended to provide an area which is convenient, visually pleasing, contributes to the economic welfare of the community, and allows for a wide range of general business and other compatible uses. As noted above, storage yards are a conditional use in the commercial district. Landscaping requires that fences not be used along street rights of way. The applicant proposes to install a 15-foot buffer landscaping bed with a fence along all property lines. The fence is requested in order to provide security for stored items. Staff suggests that with adequate landscaping, it's possible to allow for the fencing along the rights of way and still meet the purpose of the code to provide that aesthetically pleasing corridor. The fourth standard, the use shall be so located and arranged on the site to avoid significant noise, glare, odor, and other nuisances and dangers. Staff finds this standard is met. The development is located next to single-family residential dwellings and vacant properties. The applicant stated no noise, glare, odor, or other nuisances and dangers will be present on the storage lot. The fifth standard. The proposed development shall not significantly impair the value of the adjoining property. Staff finds their standard is met. The storage yard is compatible with neighboring uses, and staff is not aware of any evidence that would suggest that the storage yard would impair adjoining property values. 6, the size and scale of the use is such that it will be adequately served by existing public services and facilities. Staff finds the standard is met. The proposed storage yard will require no public services. The property is located in CES's response area and is served by the police department. 7th, granting the conditional use shall not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. Staff finds the standard is met. The storage yard is compatible with neighboring uses. Staff does not believe that granting the conditional use permit will be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. And finally, the 8th, the property where the development is to occur is current in payments owed to the city, including property tax, sales tax, utility billing, and assets, or has entered into an agreement with the city for repayment as is in compliance with terms. Staff finds the standard is met. The Soldotna Finance Department reported that there are no outstanding obligations owed to the city. There were a few additional comments. So in accordance to our code, we mailed 17 notices to property owners within 300 feet, notifying them of this action. We received no written or oral comments prior to this meeting. Staff provided the city building official, public works director, and utility manager the opportunity to comment on the conditional use permit application. The director of public works, Kyle Cornelius, stated that the stormwater must be addressed appropriately. It may not negatively impact adjacent right-of-way or private property. This conditioner was placed on the resolution to reflect the concern. The director of streets and maintenance, Scott Sundberg, stated that Cahill Lane was accepted by the city after it had been built and is actually not built to city standards. His concern is that the volume of traffic may deteriorate the road at a quicker pace. Additionally, there is concern regarding commercial traffic within a neighborhood. And then finally, staff had concern over the topography, and there's a topographic map on page 8 of that staff report. The topography on the lot may restrict development within some areas is just something that we wanted to make note. And so with that, staff has determined that the project meets or partially meets the general standards for development in the commercial zoning district and recommends approval of the site plan for development of a storage yard, subject to the following conditions. The first is that construction and maintenance be in accordance with the conditional use permit application submitted on April 9th, 2024. A buffer landscape bed shall be installed along all property lines. The landscape bed shall be 15 feet in width. Trees shall be planted at a minimum of 20 feet on center. Trees shall be planted in a minimum of 2 equally staggered rows. No more than 50% of the planted trees may be deciduous. Existing native trees and natural vegetation may be applied towards meeting the buffer landscaping requirements, provided the intent of the section is satisfied. The fourth, evergreen trees shall be a minimum of 6 feet in height. A planting and deciduous trees shall be a minimum of 1.5-inch caliper. Fifth is landscaped areas shall be protected from impacts resulting from snow storage and removal operations. The sixth is the applicant must obtain a driveway permit prior to the use of the lot. The seventh is a submission of a sign permit for any signage. 8 is all landscaping shall be completed prior to June 30th, 2025. And lastly, stormwater must be addressed appropriately and may not negatively impact adjacent rights-of-way or private property. Thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wishes to speak on this item? Yeah, come on up and then just hit the button until the little green light comes on. Takes a hot second. Yeah. Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
And then if you wouldn't mind, just state your name and your residential address for the record, and then the formalities are over.
My name is Lori Connor, and I live at 735 Cahill. And my concern is the business traffic through what is otherwise kind of a quiet residential area.
Mhm.
The thing that strikes me is that, this is the business being proposed now, but there is a future. And once we kind of, break that seal and we set the precedent that business traffic is going through there, now it's a little strip mall, or now it's a very busy, type of business that just has, we've got grandkids and kids playing out there. And I, my strong preference would be that there are already dedicated easements for roads, other ways in than going clear around and down through the residents to get there. And then if you talk about specifically this business, and we're talking about things like large motorhomes and pulling boats and things like this, we already know that there's very limited space on that road. And especially during the winter months, if people are putting their, once there's snow and it kind of narrows, we are right in the center of Cahill Lane, and we are the only one that have a big circular driveway. And I know what's going to happen as soon as two things meet going this way. We have the potential to just have people coming right up through our house just to avoid each other all the time. So I really feel like there could be better ways like that. Right off the Sterling Highway comes to mind, or maybe off Mackey Lake Road, but it would be very nice if the few of us that have homes there did not have steady and heavy, potentially, in the future, business traffic going through there. And the other thing that strikes me is that, I don't know if it's realized, but that road already, there's going to have to be a road put in either way. It doesn't look like there's a big difference in distance between, the road on Cahill Lane actually goes around the corner to the right, not down to the left. It's not completed. So there's going to have to be a road built into that parcel from the top, or there's going to have to be a road put in from the bottom, and it's probably the difference is just who's paying for it.
Mhm.
So I'd like to propose whoever's paying for the bottom to do that. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Hey,
how you doing? Oh, did you have any questions for her?
No, thank you. Thank you. No, you're not. No.
I am Nick Connor. I live with her, 735 Cahill, and I also own the property across the street from 735. I can't remember the name of it. Congratulations on buying the property. I think that's great. I'm not a kind of person that's going to be not in my backyard. That's not why I'm here. I am, looking forward to what he does with this property. This property is the first piece of property in Soldotna that you see coming in from Anchorage. This will be the piece of property to define Soldotna, other than just a big hill. And I am concerned about also coming in off of Cahill. I went and took pictures today. There's actually only about, I pulled out a tape measure and actually measured it, probably about 73 feet of that's on Cahill. I don't know why it's classified as Cahill and not Heath Street and not Mackey Lake and not Sterling Highway, but I think it's because they had no access to it. A couple years ago, I looked into purchasing this property, and I tried to talk to DOT and tried to talk to Soldotna, and it seems like they're hesitant to come off the Sterling Highway or to finish Heath Street or to even come off of Mackey Lake because of that mountain right there. But one day this is going to be a big part of Soldotna. Mayor Machicki was in here a couple weeks ago talking about the Whistle Hill project, and Soldotna is going that direction. Thinking about tomorrow, if we were to put a stoplight in or something like that, and we were to make that road go through from Cahill to Heath, people might be zipping through there to go around the stoplight. I think this property right here needs to have somebody really look at it and find out what's beneficial to not only now and the property owners, but in the future. Because I would hate to have you guys blow in there to Heath all the way to Cahill, and pretty soon we've got teenagers zipping around to try to get around the stoplight. And the road is very narrow. I took a picture of my boat on it today. If I'm in my truck on my boat, no one else is going down that road but me. It is not up to spec. And then if you get to the end of Cahill, the road just turns into, I know it's springtime, but it turns into all your grandparents' roads growing up. It's just all muddy. It's full of holes. Right now, if you were to take a trailer down there and try to turn around, you couldn't. You'd have to back into the Connors driveway to get around out of there. Because Heath is not finished either. It's got a bunch of trees down over it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I guess my question, and this is sort of, we don't typically ask questions, so we're really grateful for comments. But I'm curious, like when we do think about long-term, there aren't any great options, honestly, for this property. And I know, I know that road well, and it's a great place to walk your dog. It's not a great road to drive on, because it is so unmaintained. And so that's maybe a question for staff is, are there plans to improve that road? But for you who live in that area, I don't know what the least worst other option is for access to that property. Because if DOT won't allow off the Sterling, there's a too steep of a pitch to get onto it from Mackey. Is Heath Street your preferred option, or?
I think Heath would be a good option. And maybe, a DOT driveway next to Heath. I don't know if the DOT and the city of Soldotna, I don't know how that stuff works.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that would be a beneficial,
Oh,
right, so-
I was actually thinking of coming.
Oh, around the top?
Because it
There's
just
no
sounded
road.
like
There's no road
DOT
there.
won't, like, off of the main right away off of Sterling. It's not,
Yeah, that whole road up there, there's nothing there. It's just all
yeah.
4x trail. And then,
Yes. Yeah, and that's not my area of expertise either, but
yeah, the other, just real quick, if I have your time. The other thing is that this map is deceiving. To get onto Cahill from Mackey Lake, it is not just a straight line. You're going up a pretty steep hill on a corner to get up that hill.
Yeah.
So, traffic, coming down the ice and everything. Yeah, you guys should go check it out. And like I said, I'm totally for, businesses being built there. I think it's going to be a huge place one day for Soldotna. I just think we need to look at the road situation other than just, we allow this business here, then we'll be back here in 2 weeks from now going, or 2 years from now going, hey, this road's falling apart. People can't pass each other. There's trespassing issues, we don't want to do that. So,
Well, thank you for
all
all
right,
the good
thanks.
comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Come on up.
Hello,
Thanks.
I'm a neighbor. I'm on the other side of Mackey Lake Road. Glenn Martin's my name, by the way. And being as I knock down mountains for a living and build roads, we did the 5-lane going between Kenai and Soldotna recently, and bike paths and many other projects. Need to be aware, and you guys probably are very aware of what DOT just let out with Quality Asphalt and Dow Engineering. So there is a design build project right in front of this location. And I think it'd be a real good idea to get him access off the Sterling Highway if he can get it, which is hard. I dealt with it on the 5-lane going between here and Kenai, but it's not impossible. What they're gonna do, and I talked to the engineer just about a week ago, and she had a conversation about a possible bridge going in Soldotna Creek. Of course, I have Soldotna Creek going through my property right there and next to it there. And so there's a possibility it'll be a 5-lane going right through that area, and they'll raise the grade so that hill doesn't turn into a cluster like it is right now. And so a person might want to look at trying to apply. I love to see them go in there because it's a good idea. We do need storage, facilities. It's this is the Kenai Peninsula. People don't like pulling over the pass with everything. It's a great idea, and I'm thinking about building one off of Big Eddy myself, because I have that 38 acres on Spruce and Big Eddy and some other development we may be doing. But I would say a little communication with the city to DOT would really be a good idea on this to help this guy, this outfit get an access off there, or a future access, even if you had a temporary one going around and you approved that, but somehow get him a future access off a 5-lane isn't as bad as off the divided highway that's coming. And the way I talked to DOT, they're looking at a mile of 5-lane coming out of there and then going to the divided lane at this point. But Quality and Dow is the QAP and Dow is the main ones that's going to be designing. And I think if you have some input with them, it would really help that development. And I'm all for it. I'm right across the street. I've got that big white house on the right. And, really enjoy the city, doing what they're doing there and the future development. I'd love to see a water line come over the hill eventually. Somebody said the Whistle Stop is looking at that. I got a great well, but a lot of people up Mackey Lake Road run into problems with wells and things like that. But if there's anything we can do to assist, we're a neighbor, good neighbor. We'd enjoy having more businesses there. I think it's good for the city. City police are good at watching the place. I know I've had real good luck, right there on Mackey Lake Road, and so far it's been really good. Almost 20 years of it. My God, so time goes by fast. But anyway, that's what I got to say, and I wish them good luck. And if they need any assistance, and I have a construction company, I can give some idea of what I would do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other public comments? Would you like to come up?
Sure.
My name is Savati Rutov, and I'm the guy that's buying that piece of property there, 713 Cahill Lane. So the only comments that I have really is that my goal, and I do really want access from Sterling Highway. I wouldn't even want to go through Cahill, but I spoke to DOT and the state. They kind of told me that's my only option. There's a very small chance, almost no chance they'll give me access from Sterling Highway. just because of traffic and major accident point area. They don't want traffic coming out. But they are proposing and gonna be developing the new 4 or 5 lane there. So they said because of that, that's your only chance. While we're engineering and developing that 4 or 5 lane, we can take that into consideration of maybe doing some kind of a pull-out lane or something. So that's what I really want to do and hope for myself personally. But as of now, my only access point is through Cahill. Other than that, I do want my main access from Sterling Highway in the future. So I think that's
Thanks.
it.
Thank you. All right, with no one else wishing to speak, the public hearing is now closed. Are there any commissioner comments or questions for staff?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Murray, looking at that picture, I mean, the Cahill doesn't look like it's, as it's been mentioned, very well developed. It's a secondary road. It's in the city. But we've not, do we maintain it?
Through the chair, yes, the city does provide maintenance on that, even though it is not on our maintenance list within the code itself. Our maintenance director has said it's not built to city standards. It is it would need some considerable work to bring it up to city standards at this point, but the city does take its grader down there, it does flatten it and scrape it, and does keep it clean in the wintertime.
If I'm understanding it, second question is that the access to this property is at the end of that, or it kind of makes a little loop there or something? That's the access at the far end?
Yeah, that far, right where it starts to curve in.
And does that road continue on to Heath or not?
No, it kind of takes a right into that last house you see there off of Heath, and then it just ends. It's a dead end, and then it's just trees after that.
Okay. And Heath is our street too?
Heath is a platted right of way, but it is not a developed road. On the north part of Heath, there is a trail, but it doesn't continue all the way south to Cahill. And then the Heath right of way, it's only partially dedicated along 713 Cahill. 30 feet has been dedicated for about half the distance to the Sterling Highway, but then there's a couple 100 feet where there's no right of way platted between the Sterling Highway and where Heath Street right of way ends.
So I'm trying to understand the house that's past is on Heath, or looks like it's on Heath. How does it get access? Does it come from the north side above? You know, where this house is on the left of Heath as you're looking at it.
So again, through the chair, access to that is from Cahill. So they make a left off Mackey, go down Cahill, and there is a driveway essentially that provides access off of Cahill to that house, or those two houses there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And a follow-up question is, whose responsibility is it to bring Cahill up to standard?
Through the chair, that's something that could be initiated either by the private sector or the public sector. So the city could decide it wants to put this on its capital improvement list and bring it up to standard if it is, deemed one of those a priority. Likewise, a developer could come in and propose a development there, and the city could work with them through a development agreement and require that it be brought up to standard. And then they would either do that on their own or through a development agreement with the city.
So that could be something that we do tonight, is to require that road be brought to standard by either with a development agreement between the two parties, or by the developer or by the city before the development goes through, or before even this is, before this resolution is approved.
Yes, you could make that requirement. I don't know that it would be likely to happen, I guess I would encourage you to chat with the developer who's here and see if that would prohibit it. And if that's the case, then I would question whether it would be worth it to put on there. I think it, might be more appropriate just to vote it down, in the sense that if there isn't the access that you feel is appropriate isn't there, then that would be grounds to fail the resolution.
Mhm. And an alternative would be to postpone the vote if we feel that it's that we need to have conversations with DOT and roads maintenance to see if what their plan is, and where I know we have later on in the agenda, we are talking about the 5-year capital improvement plan, but I don't have a sense whether or not Cahill is on there or how.
I can fill you in on that. It's not, and
Okay.
it's not likely to be on it. We have several other roads that are gravel that actually meet city standards, that are, for example, Lord Baranoff is a good example where it needs improvement. It has a larger volume of homes and residents on it, and would benefit probably greater in a dollar basis, cost dollar factor than Cahill, which has limited residents.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things that go through there and or go through that thought process as far as whether it should be considered for improvement.
Mhm.
And of course, the expense of it, I have no idea what it would be, but right now it is not on the list, and I don't think it would be likely to be put on the list.
Mhm. Well, it's just, yeah, every place in town is different. This particular area is unique because it's residential area butting up right against commercial area, and we're using a residential access point for the commercial property, so every situation is different, but in this case, it does seem that in order to provide adequate safety for access for large vehicles coming into the property, whatever you're storing, and for the people who live there, that road would need to be improved. And if there's not a chance that the city is going to do it, then or at least within the next 5 years for their capital improvement plan, then yeah, I don't, we can ask the question, and I don't know if you would know the answer off the cuff, but yeah, for your own purposes, I guess, for bringing stuff in and out of there, I know that you'd have to put a road and do gravel work within your property lines, but do you think you'd need to improve from your property line down that road in order to have larger boats, vehicles, whatever you're going to store, actually be able to get down that road?
I would probably not do anything to improve it. They would not be financially feasible.
Yeah.
It would just have to be not done, just vacant land at that point. If not approved or there's no access, it
Mhm.
would just sit vacant. But other than that, that's the only access point as of now, and that's the only option we have to get into the property. You can fit things through there. It is tighter probably than most roads, but
Mhm.
it's passable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's passable. The holes are bad. The mud is bad. I know that road really well. I don't know why. I think I have a friend who lives down there. So, okay. I don't want to eat up all the question time. Are there any other comments or questions for staff? Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have a question for staff, and this is minor compared to what we've been discussing, but the applicant, Mr. Rutoff, wants to put a 6-foot chain link fence in. And is that for security, Mr. Rutoff? I thought so. I don't feel that the tree buffer is really going to provide security. Sure, it'll sort of hide the storage lot, the storage area. But if somebody wants to drive a truck in to drag something out because the gate's locked and they can't get in, I don't think a few small trees are going to do that.
So the applicant is proposing actually to do both. One is he will have trees on as proposed on the outside, at least 15 feet, and he's proposing to keep the native trees there, as I understand it, the existing vegetation. And then inside of that and towards his storage area would be his security fence. So the fence would actually, it's not required because he's got 15 feet of buffer. The fence is his option, and he's selected to put that in for those security purposes.
I misunderstood the staff report then. I thought staff was saying he will not install a security fence since he's going to have the buffer.
No, I will.
Okay,
I will install it.
all right, thank you.
Okay, I have another question, and it especially, I think it's especially important to answer, given your comment about, and your comment too about the Quality Asphalt Paving. I used to work for them. I worked for them for many years, so I built a road or two in my day. That highway, as it goes up in grade, and even now, because that property is so steep right there, if you keep your 15-foot buffer on the basically the bottom line closest to the Sterling Highway, that will not actually visually buffer the lots on the top from the line of sight of the Sterling Highway. So it won't actually meet the intent of that code, because it's basically like up on a pedestal and the trees are down there and the cars are up here on this, especially in the next 5 years, this elevated highway. So I don't really know how we want to deal with that or address it, but I think it's worth talking about. Yeah. So I don't know, but right now it doesn't meet the intent of that standard with the current placement of the buffer of the trees, which I think it's great. You know, it's like the cheapest and I think best way it is to retain native vegetation. So that's smart. My question is just, it won't actually be a visual barrier where it's at. So do we need to move that or just require that the 15-foot native vegetation buffer needs to actually buffer the storage yard from the traffic?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Can you come on up to?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we need to have this on the record.
yeah, so you're partially correct, but my property line actually starts on the hill. So when you're driving on Mackey Lake, there's trees that aren't even mine in the hillside. That's still the right of way of Mackey Lake Road. So my property actually starts on the hill, and it's not on the top of the hill, but it's almost 3/4 of the way up.
Mhm.
And then from then on, by the time you do the 15-foot buffer, the top of basically where it starts to arch flatten out, that's where the trees would still be. So
Okay.
there would be actually an elevated tree line
Okay.
up there. Yeah. So right now it seems like my property is by Mackey Lake to the bottom of the ditch, but it's not. The property line is actually elevated and up towards the top of the hill.
Okay, I'm most worried, not worried, I'm just trying to think practically about the line along the Sterling Highway and just looking at those lines, especially over there in the, what's that, the southwest corner, southeast corner? I don't actually know where
I mean, the corner that goes closer
Yeah.
to Soldotna.
yeah,
Yeah, that corner does drop down, and yeah, I mean,
especially since like that's the top of the hill and all the cars are driving in and they're leaving town,
Yeah.
So, nothing's gonna be perfect ever. I'm
Mhm.
just thinking
Okay.
now for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that we're not like, oh, that actually didn't do anything. We wasted 15 feet of your property and we didn't achieve
Mhm.
what our standard is supposed to achieve. So.
I mean, there's almost, you can probably put 100 feet or 50 feet of trees there. It's not going to matter because as you can see that corner, it's pretty flat up, almost to the halfway into the property where it starts to go back up. So there's nothing you can actually do or plant there to obstruct it, really. Even if if I leave a 100-foot tree line, you'll still see over them, even if they're 6-foot tall trees that I plant, you know what I mean? So.
you don't mind, I would like to ask a clarifying question. So because of those grades on this property, based on your site plan, it shows the perimeter of the property being fenced and treed. Am I understanding you correctly that you only plan to level and grade the flat part, the top part of the
Yes.
of that property, and everything else that is there will remain, the vegetation would remain there, and the remainder of the sloped
Basically,
areas?
yeah, so we'll remove some of the trees in the dip because that's where we want to drain everything, and that's where we want to push the snow. Since it's a parking lot, we'll have accesses, and that's how the ridge line, so we'll push snow into there. So we'll still clear out the trees, but it'll be left alone, the vegetation, until the future. I'm not sure, but yeah. Just the top will be like flattened out and parking lot, and then that dip will be for water collection and snow storage.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many total units? I mean, I'm looking at that picture, and I can count the spaces, but how many spaces do you intend to have in the development?
84?
184 is the actual spots that I outlined, but it could be less. I think those lines are just theoretical there. It'll be gravel parking lot, so there won't be actually any lines. I doubt we'll have anywhere near that much people there or vehicles, but I just wrote that for you guys and most of the bank.
Thank you.
Mark, if you're still with us, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
My only concern, or one of my concerns with this is the visibility going out of town into town. I think just need to make sure we're making appropriate decisions when we consider this.
Thanks. I don't necessarily want to postpone the vote on this if staff doesn't think it's necessary, but we could. One idea that I'm having right now is to require that the native vegetation buffer actually be on the same level grade that your storage parking is at, so that it would actually buffer. I think that would actually help us have that standard actually meet our intent. And then regardless of whether the Strode, as DOT likes to call the Sterling Highway and other highways that are both a street and a road at the same time because of all the access points. And I think at some point we're going to have to reduce the speed or through DOT, but the city will need to appeal to DOT to probably bring that speed down, and the more access points we get on there, which if you'd like, I mean, if you want access off the Sterling, we'll probably have to like bump it down to, I don't know, I think it's 45 or 55 even still right there. So bumping it down, I think, is in everybody's best interest. But if the feeder highway is going to be a lot taller, that is going to be having a buffer on grade would actually be, I think, the easiest way for us to have it actually buffered from the line of sight, which is the whole point of having a buffer.
Yes, Chair. The gentleman in the back there, did you hear how high the highway will be elevated?
I didn't get an accurate, level, they're still designing, but I'm estimating just by what I'm looking at, they're gonna put a bridge in there, you can go up quite a way. They're trying to get the hill out.
Wow.
Wow.
They have to still go to Porter Street.
Yeah.
And they still gotta come off Mackey Lake Road. My concern with them was, going down Mackey Lake Road, they need to widen it out.
Mhm.
Not only right, somehow to make it more accessible, safer. But I would say 15 feet, 20 feet, it could go up, you know, in order to make the abutments on a bridge, you know, and if it's a bridge and if it's a big pipe, same way.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the cleanest language that we could give and like give you as much opportunity to build as many units as possible for like business purposes. If you keep native vegetation, it wouldn't have to necessarily be like all the 15 feet on the grade. Those big spruce trees are gonna provide coverage even if they're, you know, down the slope a little bit, but if they're all down the slope, then they're not actually gonna buffer, so. Yeah. And then the other concern, before moving this forward is like some sort of nod to needing to bring Cahill up to standard as it's appropriate with the other needs of the city. You know, I understand that it serves 4, currently 5 residents, plus now a future commercial property. So I don't know how how roads are prioritized, but it is bad.
There's Overdell off there too.
Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair, we just had the Connors here. Was there anyone else that of the property owners and Jason provide us any feedback? No.
Just a nice neighbor across the road.
I just wanted to say.
If you wouldn't mind coming,
Yeah.
sorry for
No,
the,
go ahead.
yeah, just
Go
come on up. We have to get it captured on the microphone for
I
the
don't know
record.
why the difference this time, but prior owners had wanted to do some sort of business there. And at that point, we had neighbors coming to our door having us sign a petition about the through traffic. So I know that the concern is there. I'm not sure
Mhm.
why the silence this time, but I know that that has been a neighborhood concern in
Mostly
the
just
recent
the-
past.
the
Yeah.
the poor state of the road or the narrowness
They
of the
just
road,
didn't
just
want
the
all such, you know,
maybe.
the busyness of
Mhm.
business traffic coming through there, you know.
Mhm.
Is that what I understood him to say? And I
Mhm.
signed on it too, but
Yeah,
but that they had actually come to, knocked on our door about that before.
okay, thanks. Well, I guess, my question for staff first is, do we need to have any, further conversations with, our maintenance department or DOT about whether or not they're gonna provide access before we make a vote tonight? We could postpone it till next meeting.
Through the
If
chair,
you-
I don't believe so, mainly because we already did receive comments from our maintenance director. And as I mentioned about our CIP, this is not a road that is of high priority within the city. And then DOT, the applicant has already spoken to the DOT, and he received the same information that I recall the previous owner or the person who wanted to do a brewery up there received the same information that DOT is hesitant to provide any access off the Sterling Highway when access is available on the backside off of Cahill, regardless of how it's zoned. If there was no access off Cahill, then they would grant him access off of the Sterling if that was the only place available. But right now there's options, and I think I think it's going to be difficult to get access, not only from DOT for that reason, but also because of the topography
Mhm.
and getting up that hill off of the Sterling, that is.
Yeah, unfortunately, it feels like the burden is, or just this is the way it is, the burden is gonna be on the developer for this property in terms of like having access that's commercial standard, I guess, you know? And so whether or not we should require the developer to, it sounds like it will be prohibitive though, so that's not necessarily a great option, but if it's in the ultimate best interest of that area to have that road brought up to standard so that business through traffic is, I don't know, maybe it's better if it's small and potholey and the business traffic has to go slower. So there's pros and cons to all the moves. Yeah, some of these things are out of our control. Many things are out of our control. But. I guess I would like to make one amendment requiring that the buffer actually buffer the line of sight from the Sterling Highway. So yeah, a buffered landscape bed shall be installed. And maybe just like at a minimum of, let's see, existing. Perhaps it's better on number 3. Provided the intent of this section is satisfied to buffer the property from line of sight of the Sterling Highway. I think that's clear enough. Basically, the road traffic can't see your stuff is the intent of buffering storage yards from right-of-ways. So there needs to be some visual barrier. And so you can do that however is easiest for you, but.
It's a tough one because that's gonna stop us from, creating that whole idea of pushing the snow, to have the trees in the way. Where do we push the snow? We'll create openings, but the openings have to be quite wide, and there's gonna be 3 opening sections, then it's not really gonna do much anyway after that. Where do we push the snow? There's trees in the way, kind of a thing. We can't have a pile in the middle of the parking lot. It has to be, two sloping somewhere where it slopes away from everybody's properties, and that's the best option, is to go there. You can't really change the height of the road, the elevation of that property. I mean, yes, you'll see some stuff, but I guess kind of it is what it is. Not perfect, but it doesn't meet the 15-foot tree line around the perimeter. But because of the shape of the property, you'll still see over that. But it is what it is, I guess. Would be my comment. I kind of would have to not have the tree line up on that hill because it will be in my way for the development and the use of the property.
No, I mean, I understand the dilemma. I think there's maybe a way that we can meet somewhere in the middle. Still have a usable space, still have snow removal, but have some buffer that actually buffers is what I'm trying to get to.
Madam Chair, further question of the applicant. So if I'm understanding correctly, the top part of the property is fairly flat. It probably slopes, but not bad. But there's no way you can build a road in from Mackey Lake. It seems to be that's the one thing that would, and I guess I want to understand why that can't happen.
If you go there, yeah, I mean, you'd have to see it in person, but it's very steep. It will not meet requirements for the grade. You'd have to cut the whole hill down. It's basically impossible to really do it. Plus, there's a lot of traffic through Mackey Lake. I don't know how you'll come down that hill with ice, wintertime especially. It's just an accident waiting to happen there.
Because of the angles?
No, just so Mackey is about here, and then that property is about up here. So it's like almost straight down. So there's no way to make a road through there that would be safe, basically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Unless the city wants to buy it off of me and just keep it as a park.
mhm.
You know, that way nothing will be built there. You guys can design it how you want. You guys got nice little trees growing in there for the entrance and the view of the lot, you know, in and out of Soldotna.
Big sign.
Yeah.
Can I suggest something over here?
Yeah, come on up. Sorry. Getting your steps in. Everyone's getting their steps in.
Here we go. Glenn Martin again. They do have on fencing, you can get some green,
Slats, yeah.
you know, something that you can put on a fence, which I've used before on projects, and that might help a buffer. It isn't that terribly expensive. You know, that may be possible. You know, I have properties in Florida and we go through this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
My only objection to that is I would do it, but it's only a 6-foot fence.
Right.
So you'd still see over it. It's not gonna do anything, especially if it's
Yeah.
out on the hill. Because there's trees that are 20, 30 feet tall.
Right.
If you guys worried about a tree that's 30 feet tall, that's not protecting the view. then
Right.
The 6-foot fence is useless.
Right.
You know what I mean?
All depends on where the fence is and
Yeah.
how you do it. I understand.
And I'm
that.
not putting a fence through the middle of the property.
No.
I mean, that's just,
So you wouldn't want the fence up where the store, like basically around the perimeter of your storage lot?
no,
Why?
because that would, be in my way again for.
For snow removal?
I have to have 8 gates opening up. It's not gonna work.
Mm.
Plus, I'm just essentially cutting a piece of the property away and making it unusable. Which that low point is perfect for my, for me, because I get to divert all the water and, snow there.
Is the 3 spaces necessary, or is like one spot in the corner?
It's not necessary, but I just did it just to have plenty of spots to put the snow. Because,
Yeah.
you know, snow piles are quick. The more you have.
But you're
the
gonna
better.
push it over the edge. You're not gonna have it piled up, right?
Well, I mean, it'll still start piling up. I guess it really depends how far in they can go. They usually can't really go that much. It's just like backing up. And the more storage per snow you have, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that now that we've gained understanding about like how the steep grade of this property is actually gonna make that standard not met at all, that requires visually pleasing, slightly sight obscured with the evergreens, I think that we need to address that before we move this forward. And I want to do it in the way that's as best for the developer as possible, but that still meets our code.
Would you guys be able to, you know, one of these days when you guys are driving by, just to see the height of the trees that are currently on the low part?
Yeah.
And just see like the tips of them. I'm not even sure myself, actually. I'm
Yeah.
curious now.
That's all I want, is just like, can you just keep enough trees and enough spaces-ish where most of your lot is buffered. And I don't need it to be onerous. I just like want it to actually buffer.
Because the trees are pretty tall, so.
Right.
You know, the tips of them might even actually obstruct
Hmm.
even in the dip, the trees are
Right.
tall enough to actually.
And that's all I want to put in there, is just like figure out a way to make that happen. Like when you're doing this, figure out a way to have the native vegetation actually obscure the storage yard from the highway.
I don't know if this will help, but I did take this photo. And so this is me standing at Mackey Lake in the Sterling Highway. This is all DOT right away. What you see, this 4-wheeler trail right here is also on DOT right away. So you can kind of match up how dense this vegetation is currently. I don't know after the expansion what it'll look like, but at the moment it does.
They'll have to take it all, yeah, for the 5-lane.
I'm not sure. I mean, you can see how
Mhm.
like, I mean, that's all that dense vegetation's right here. And he still has quite a bit more
Mhm.
land on that side. And then on the Cahill side, or I mean, where Heath would come in, I'm not sure what that looks like as far as his property lines go, but there is quite a bit of vegetation there.
Yeah, that's the other thing is the property actually starts quite a bit inside. So there's a bunch of trees that are outside of my property that I can't even touch anyway.
Yeah.
That's DOT, and it adds a bunch more, protection versus that 15 foot is probably more like 30 feet actually, or more calculating their trees. as
Yeah.
well.
Yep. Yeah, and you never know if you're gonna keep that or not. I know south of Soldotna down the way, they had to take 30 feet on both sides of all vegetation for people. So you can't count on that staying there, but yeah, I agree. There's a lot of trees. Maybe this is a non-issue and we can just move it forward. I guess I'd just like to make sure that that standard is actually met where we require a buffer. So if staff feels that it's sufficient, I'd like to add half a sentence in there, but go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, through the chair. Mr. Rutoff, did you buy this property specifically thinking about a storage yard?
Not long term though.
But you bought it purposely to do this project?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
No, I want to have it there for, for the foreseeable future until I'm able to develop to what I actually want it to be, but that's a separate.
Okay.
I don't know if that matters or not, but that would be another conditional use permit.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I feel like I've drugged this on and I'm not going to apologize just because it is consequential. But if there's a way to, I don't think there's a neat way to do this. So I guess I don't know that there's a neat way to add a half a sentence on to item number 3 to clarify what we mean by this section is satisfied. Because to me, that means this section is satisfied when we actually buffer the use that you're applying for from the right of way. But if that's wrong, let me know and I will step down.
Well, according to Mr. Rudolph, and I think I agree from driving to Sterling enough, that those trees are going, the trees that are already there are going to buffer from the highway, even if it's elevated 40, 50 feet.
I think that's the question, yeah.
My belief that it should work.
Yeah, because those trees are way taller than the height of
Right.
that elevation you guys are worried about, but it will still protect the visibility
Okay, cool.
to a certain degree. You'll still be able to see the trees follow everywhere. That's unavoidable.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I guess what I'm struggling with is we're trying to put a round peg in a square hole. We have a commercial piece of property someone would like to develop, and we have residential property on the back side of it where people are used to a residential situation. We have a road that's doesn't meet our standards. We don't have it on the capital plan. I mean, and the folks here tonight are saying, we're not objecting, but how do you accommodate the fact that the road doesn't really meet any standard for this kind of a development?
Yeah, that's
And,
a big concern.
we don't want, we want development. The question is, should we postpone? I mean, one question I would have, and I don't know, I'm sure none of this stuff happens quick, and I'm sure as a developer, you don't want to sit around on this piece of property forever. And it sounds like the DOT is at least 4 to 5 years away, minimum. Is that fair to say? That it's one of those things, neighbors are neighbors, and if the road is inadequate, then there's 180 spaces. That's pretty large development. Would it be, if we postponed it, you've mentioned that, to just request our Public Works Director, give us some ballpark as to how much it's going to cost, and then we can also, send a note to our city council. Does this, it's not on the list, I get that, but we are trying to encourage development. What is the city willing to do to make that happen? yes or no. I mean, those are just two questions that would not postpone this indefinitely, but we could get some sense whether it's the developer has to come to the table with something or the city needs to come to the table to help make this happen. Because as it stands, it just seems like it's an accident waiting to happen in the sense that the road is not sufficient to carry the capacity that's being requested. So that I would move, and perhaps the director wants to speak, but that's my sense. To postpone it a month, that's not an inordinate amount of time. And just ask those two questions. What would it cost, to bring it up to standards? And is the city council at all amenable to helping participate in that effort? I understand it would jump over other things, but it is a large piece of property. Ultimately, he wants to, I read your thing, you say you want to do residential, but obviously that's not what's before us tonight. If it were residential, it'd be a whole different conversation, because it would be consistent with the property adjacent. And it would just be going into a residential area.
I mean, the traffic will be way less than residential because nobody's gonna be in and out back and forth. It'll just be kind of every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. So it stays with the tenor of the property on the backside. And it's unfortunate that you have, that you got topography on both sides of you, two sides that just don't work for you without, the state. And that's a whole nother level of conversation. So that would be my sense. And I would make that informal motion to postpone the decision on this application and ask the Public Works Director what would be an estimate of the cost to improve this road so it would be better access. And is the city council have any interest in it? And we get the answer to those two questions. And, I think where I'm at is that's yes or a no.
Yeah, that's an unanswered question for me too, and I don't know that I would be able to vote yes in good faith without.
Is that reasonable for the city council and the Public Works Director to give us some indication of where they are?
Through the chair, I'm sure the Public Works Director could probably scratch out a rough cost of what it would cost to bring that road into standard. It would be very rough because I don't think he has any idea what's underneath the gravel, and what it would take to create the subbase there. But he certainly could provide a worst case scenario. I don't know that council would say yes or no. They rely on this board as far as making their decisions on land use. And so I guess to me, it's a question of, whether if that road got improved, Cahill improved, would that change your decision as to whether it should be developed as a commercially? Is that compatible with the residential development? I mean, that's what these folks are saying is.
Yeah, but
is it compatible?
they're largely, at least what they've shared with us, is that their concern is the size of the road, its condition, with respect to the amount of traffic it will generate for this business to be successful. So it just seems to me, we grade it right now. I mean, are you going to have any, and of course, that's the whole point. You're going to bring gravel in for your side, but there's no in between, I guess, in terms of just widening out the existing road that isn't meeting spec, on a temporary basis, or whatever. I don't know. So I moved to postpone for those two questions.
I'll second.
The vote on the motion to postpone. Oh,
Discussion on.
Certainly.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that what I heard from concerns from the neighborhood is the state of the road, but also just the fact that it's commercial property and that it's not in harmony with the surrounding land use, and not the fact that that is commercial property. So, but the access part is, accessing commercial property through a residential road is, I think, the concern. The fact that it will generate, higher traffic than the residential area.
So you've got a motion on the floor and second, and so now it's typically the commission's opportunity to provide any other comments before the vote is taken, but it's usually not public input at.
Yeah, we can make an exception if you have a burning comment that you'd like to make.
Yeah, just, my comment is that, let's just say the road is fixed up to, no potholes. It doesn't seem that, the city or you guys would even like all that traffic either way, even if it's a better road or not. So my question would be, can this property not even be developed unless DOT allows access through Sterling Highway? Just have this basically property vacant until, we find out what DOT says. If not, then this property is not developable to anybody. We won't have any type of business or storage or residential ever, because like it or not, that's the only access. If you guys don't like the traffic there, then this property will have to stay vacant. That's just kind of my comment there. It doesn't really matter if it's updated or not. Gravel road will stay the same. Potholes will come back. So.
Yeah, and I think his point was, yeah, and I guess that was my comment, and that's a fair,
Yeah, I mean,
assessment. I think-
if not,
think
then this
his-
property is not developable,
Yeah.
and I'll need to know that, and that's okay if you guys say no, we can't have any traffic through Cahill. Whoops, oh well, this property is just sucks, and then that's good for me to know, then I won't, proceed with anything else. That way I don't have to keep, putting more money into it. So that's the information I would need to know.
Yep. No, I think there's big outstanding questions on whether Cahill can be improved so that it's safely accessible for business use and residential use. I think that's the only question that we can really answer. And to the other point of increased business traffic through a residential area, I think that's just the nature of, unfortunately, like living next to commercial property. We could make the decision that the only access point is through that we don't want to provide access through a residential area, but I think that would be a pretty tough call to make. I think waiting a month is well worth us coming up with a good decision for all the parties involved. But any other comments before we call for the vote?
Yeah, question. So where does Cahill runs that whole greenish blue line from Mackey to Heath?
No, it's
Well, it's up there.
That's the property line, that's the bluish green.
Right, where's the Cahill Road? Actually.
Runs that.
Oh.
Lane spelled out there.
Yeah, okay.
Two lines there.
right on the corner of Mackey Lake or
No,
just, okay.
Sorry, since I was talking, another thought is people might not know how to to find it. They're gonna see it on the Sterling Highway and go, how do we get to that location? There's no.
I think for the business of being a storage yard, it's easy enough to access, because there's only, it's like customers, and if yeah, I know that the ultimate goal is not storage yard, but, yeah, multi-unit. So So that, yeah, it would make sense to have that access come through Cahill for that purpose. But Mark, any questions on the vote to postpone?
John makes a good point. How this discussion here,
Can we call for the vote? Okay. On the motion to postpone?
Vote on the motion to postpone. Gary Turner,
Yes.
Dennis Murray,
Yes,
Mark Burton, and Caitlin Baza.
Yes,
Vote passed to postpone.
thanks.
So if I could, Madam Chair, just for the information of the people in the cheap seats here. Our next meeting of the Planning Commission will be Wednesday, June 5th. So that'll be before the commission at that time again. So 5:30.
Yeah, I apologize for the delay. I think this will hopefully yield a better decision for everybody. Yeah, thank you.
So my quick question would be, let's say if the road's upgraded by the city, then it'd be fine. If it's not upgraded, then no, it'll be. All right.
I don't think we can answer that question, but I think it's just a matter of how best to move forward for you and for everybody. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry for the delay. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. All right, with that resolution postponed, we can move on to item number 5, public comments without prior notice. There are none. Informational items, FY 2025 through FY 29 5-year capital improvement plan. We have the staff report.
I was gonna put these on your desks earlier and forgot to do that.
Yep. Thanks for, yep, bye-bye.
So through this item is the one you see every year. Kyle usually comes, gives a presentation on the capital improvement plan. And what I provided for you is last year's 5-year CIP. And he is in the process right now of collecting information from different boards, commissions, and from different departments as to where our priorities should be. So at this point, what I've shared with you not only is the 5-year CIP, but also within your packet materials is a memo that I wrote to Mr. Cornelis regarding our departmental priorities. And so what we've historically done in the past is included any additional items that the Planning Commission is recommending into this memo. And I've indicated to Mr. Cornelis that due to timing, that this was originally supposed to be on the council's agenda as a work session next week, Wednesday, which means we would have missed the packet. And that's why the packet materials get sent out a week in advance. So in this instance, what we're going to do is any comments that you make, I will supplement this memo with your comments and will be provided to Kyle and then to the council and to Jeanette for their information and review. So I would like to share with you briefly what our department recommended. There's a lot of the same things that you've seen in the past, including continuing the funding for the storefront improvement program. New is the second item, which is the Riverfront redevelopment project implementation phase. So in this, we're requesting $200,000 be placed in the capital improvement fund. And those funds could potentially be used for the 30% design Estates Avenue and the related enhancements for that. Dollars could also be utilized for amending and adopting city street standards and changes to our zoning code to facilitate plan implementation. And third, funds could be used to assemble site easements for riverfront trail connections. So that's new to the CIP, or a new recommendation to the CIP from the planning department. Homestead Lane construction was on the CIP last year, and we're recommending that it remain because of the connectivity that it offers and the safety concerns on that connection. The comprehensive plan was also on the CIP last year, and again, we're recommending that it remain. It's been over 13 years since we've adopted our plan. And as we all know, a lot has changed in the last 13 years. And we've also achieved many of our goals. So it's time to refresh. The next item was trail and pedestrian improvements. And this also was on the CIP last year. It typically is. The challenge is that it not keep getting bumped back, but that we actually move forward in when it gets funded. Obviously, there's been some major financial issues within the city, namely funding the field house, which has caused some of our projects to be moved back a few years. But this one, trail and pedestrian improvements, does remain on the CIP, as does the following one, Centennial K Beach Property Master Plan. That was on there for last year as well. Reconstruct Marydale is the same, and Fireweed is also the same. So what we're recommending from ED&P is that those items be advanced from their previous years to the year so if it was originally proposed for 2027 to be built, we're suggesting that, okay, it's time to move it to 2026, and next year will be time to shift it to 2025 and so on. So that's honestly not new. It is sometimes difficult to find the money that we are suggesting. It's a challenge for both the Public Works Department and for council to select these projects, knowing that our budget is limited. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is see if there's any questions and see if there's any recommendations from the commission on other inclusions to the CIP.
Madam Chair. So if I'm understanding, the dates on the various projects are from the prior years, so we would just simply move the years up, or did I get that right?
Through the chair. So let's take a look at the Riverfront redevelopment project first. So if you look at the handout I gave you, this spreadsheet, and if you look at the middle column, FY 2026, the very top item is Riverfront redevelopment project. And you'll see on my memo, Riverfront redevelopment has been moved to 2025. So again, I'm suggesting that the time is now to fund this project and move forward. And that is the case also, for example, Homestead Lane, which was in fiscal year 2026 for construction. And I'm suggesting it be, well, actually, I have it at the same. And actually, that was strategic in my thinking, in that we are crossing our fingers for STIP funds from the state. This project was rated high, but at this point, it hasn't been funded, but we're hoping that it will be given it another opportunity. So generally, yes, we're moving these projects forward in the years. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Marydale, I don't remember it from before. What's the reason to improve Marydale? I mean, I don't understand that.
Yeah, it seems pretty good.
Thank you. I know our public works director and our street maintenance director would argue that. They feel it's in poor condition. It does have a few bury pits. It does, the maintenance costs are high compared to other streets. And the other thing this does is it provides, it's a huge connector street for the hospital, for the high school, and for a lot of residential development. And so the volume of traffic is high on this road. It does get beat up, and they feel it's time.
So if I understand correctly, it's not to widen it, it's not to do any of those things, it's maybe to dig it up and improve it?
Through the chair, yes, that would be the proposal, complete rebuild of this. And the planning department has been stressing and pushing the concept that if it gets rebuilt, that it also be redesigned to provide better accessibility for pedestrians and bikers. That perhaps if it's going to remain at 25 miles per hour, that the lanes could be narrowed to actually encourage traffic to move at a slower speed than it typically does on Marydale, Redoubt, and Kobuk. Those are wide roads and they are straight and they encourage higher speeds. It's so, right. And so our
Speak for
our
yourself.
our concern at our department really is getting an appropriate design for our rebuilds as we go forward.
I have a question about the gravel to black program. It says there's approximately 9 miles of gravel roads within the city limits, and I'm curious if the goal is to have everything paved in city limits, or?
To the chair. No, I don't believe it is. When we last did our roads maintenance plan, it's probably about 6 years now, it was identified that there's some streets that are gravel, but lie within essentially the core of the city. And I mentioned Lord Baranoff. Another one that was paved not too long ago was Sterling Street. Another one is Daisy Lane. Another one is, I mean, I can go on, but those streets that are within the core have a higher volume of traffic, and also makes it difficult for our maintenance crew to get to those roads. They're driving down paved streets to grade a street once a month that's in the core, whereas our gravel streets out on East Redoubt, they're mostly, I think all gravel roads have a less volume. When they send a grader out to do the work, they're doing multiple roads in the same area, and it isn't as expensive to do that. And so there's a number of roads that there are no plans to improve them beyond gravel.
Okay, thanks. And I was curious, I can ask at a later point, but if you know off the top of your head, what some of it's a small number, it's only 420 grand in FY 27 for improving various locations for pedestrian trails. And is it like as per the comp plan and the trail plan, maybe they're specified in there?
If you're asking like specifically the trails that would be.
Yeah, do you know which ones are on the top of the list for improving, or? It's not very much money, and so I'm not sure how much improvement or what kind of improvement was intended.
It was, I believe, purposely kept generic so that we could do a number of things. One is address priorities, but then also to use those funds potentially as matches for federal grants, similar to what we've done with our ATAP funding for the project, the trails that hopefully will someday be built between Soldotna Creek Park and Homestead Lane. We were able to leverage city funds to get that grant, and hopefully this would do the same. I can tell you there's Joel, and I'm sure has a number of projects in his head that he would like to see done, as would myself. I would love to see a connection along Lingonberry that would connect essentially Swiftwater Park to our downtown and establish that and create that connection. So there isn't a priority list. It's the Parks and Rec Trail Plan has several recommendations on different opportunities, but that hasn't been identified yet.
And is that one of the ones that you were proposing be moved to 26? Or is it just going to stay in 27?
No, I believe I pushed it forward. Let's take a look.
Anyways, I would,
Oh, I do have it in 27.
there's a lot that needs to be done in it.
Yeah, no, I will make that amendment if that's the wishes of the commission. And certainly, I agree with it, to move it forward.
Yeah. And a follow-up question about, this was for the wayfinding project, was pedestrian navigation throughout the city. Is that part of the TBD for riverfront redevelopment implementation phase? Or would that be, is that kind of bumped off the 5-year horizon?
No, it has not been bumped off the horizon. The city council funded the wayfinding project, and we have, I believe it's $60,000 that they dedicated for that. We're at the point right now, we wanted to complete the riverfront plan and then begin some organized talks with DOT on a number of issues with regard to both wayfinding and with regard to access along the Sterling Highway and how it might interact with the riverfront plan. So once we have our project manager on board, we will set those meetings up and try to get that ball rolling again.
Yeah, and most of these wayfinding signs for pedestrians would be on our right-of-ways or enough of them on DOT's right-of-ways that, okay.
Yeah, a lot, unfortunately.
Sorry, I mean, off the record, no, on the record. It would be, I think, good to include some folks in those conversations who are able to hopefully lend a cultural component to our wayfinding signs, whether it's language of First Peoples or, yeah, I'm sure that's in the plan, but I'm glad to hear that the money's been approved. Lots of good stuff on here.
Are there any things that you feel are missing as a commission that you want to see listed, things that, you've routinely either seen here through our meetings or just things you've observed within the community that?
Yeah. Yeah, how many roads like that are out there where they serve 6 people? Yeah.
Balancing act between residential, commercial. Same time, city has both sides. I mean, we've got the project to Fireweed, that's provide access to residential housing. My understanding.
Fireweed certainly could provide access to and open up some additional lands. It would also just ease our traffic situation, our north-south traffic, by providing another connector street there. The Cahill property, There's, I think, a number of options, certainly within the commercial district, residential development is allowed. That property could also be rezoned, to residential if that's, the wishes of the commission and council. So there's options there that, are available to us, whether or not that road gets improved.
I wonder if the Cahill residents now knew that was a commercial piece of property.
Sure they did.
Didn't know.
Hmm.
They did.
You mean when he bought?
No, not with Ruthoff did, but the folks that own the property. But how
Oh, if they knew that that was,
knew that was commercial
I mean,
property.
it's on the Sterling Highway. You'd think that they would, but yeah, it is.
Is that something you want me to put in the memo for commission that Cahill be included?
I mean, I don't know what else is like, I don't know how many other roads like Cahill are out there that are potholy and not meeting standard.
And this one unfortunately has no other access.
Yeah.
Is what it is, and that's what people say. I mean, they weren't opposed. They just wish that it was, and they weren't opposed to having those neighbors, they just were not happy with the road.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I got.
I heard mixed. I heard that they really wished that it weren't going to be the increased traffic from a commercial property, but that's not really anything that we can, there's nothing I don't think that we can do about that, other than to fix the road.
How
yeah.
many miles long is Cahill? Do you know?
It's a few
It's like-
hundred feet. It's probably
Yeah.
600-700 feet, or maybe longer. I don't know, maybe it's a quarter
It's very
mile.
short.
It's not long.
It's not.
I'd say, let's take a look at getting it to the CIP.
I can add that to the memo. It
Yeah.
doesn't hurt.
And I apologize for belaboring a tree point. I think that was unnecessary. So sorry for wasting people's time.
I was,
How far?
okay, so it's on a quarter mile. No, you don't. You couldn't pass a motion right now if you wanted to. You did.
Oh, that's right, because of Mark.
Yeah, no, and these are recommendations, so that no motion's necessary. We'll take that recommendation. And the other thing I would offer is that as you think about things, if there's something comes up, either in the next week or so, or over the course of the year, get a hold of myself or Jen, and we can start a little parking lot list of items, and then
Mhm.
when we get together at this time of year, we can pull that out and we can review those items. So
The other thing I thought about is after a difficult subject, fire station and the existing property. Is it on, I know the borough is not decided to survey it and give it back. I'm assuming
Oh.
the city had worked on the actual, well, no, that's my understanding. But that's an important piece of property in the middle of town.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to,
not that I know of. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I do, but as far as the CIP goes, I don't believe there's an avenue there. I think it's mainly working with elected officials to apply pressure and see if they would be willing. Maybe it needs to bypass the mayor and go to the assembly, and get it in front of them. Maybe you'll get the same response, but at least, we can, yeah.
take the pitch. I understand that
Right.
the city gave it with good reason, it was without a business. But they gave it for like,
Right. No, I think it was $10 or,
It like literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
terms of CIP, I mean, it's, what is the plan, right? That has to be part of the plan, or should be. part of the plan. In some way.
Up, down, on. Really great. I think they're- Forest and bar in there and up the track. Monday. Take on this and roll in the road, you know, it's only 50 miles per hour.
So what I can do is do two things. One is request that it be on the CIP, and also just request that it be that our roads folks take a look at it and determine where it's at in its life and whether it should be added to the list. Yep.
Scott went out and did a drive around and he agreed.
Yep, we can do that. Well, what I'll do is I've got three things now. The Cahill, CES, and Riverwatch. And so I'll include those in the memo. And that way, if nothing else, it raises awareness and gets puts it on the radar. So we'll do that.
No circle is fine.
I think to balance out though, let me just go back to this part of it. I think there's so much having finished being solved now. And, you know, we really have no complaints. That's what we spent all that free money in the late seventies, early eighties. You know, much, you know, in the city, you know, much of things were, but that was far-sighted, use of public resources, a legacy. I think we should be proud of that.
Yeah, one thing, every time, you know, this rotating 5-year CIP, you know, there's always stuff on year 5 that kind of always just gets pushed, and that's the way things go. You know, we don't have infinite funds, and we do have, I would say, core functions of a city are roads, water, sewer. You could argue there's other things, you know, but I think there's always the things that are always exciting are, you know, trails or playgrounds or the library or this and that. And I think at the end of the day, even though I very much am excited by all of those things, at the end of the day, I think one thing I'd like you to add to your memo is water and sewer improvements for residents who don't have adequate, who either don't have access to city water and sewer at all. And I'm still surprised that that's not higher up on our priority list to get access. It seems like it's something that if you have the money and you come in and you're a developer, you can pay for it, but that the city doesn't actually provide access, or a lot of our stuff is really old. And so some residents have to leave their tap running in the wintertime so that their pipes don't freeze because our lines are too small. So when I hear complaints like that, it brings me back to what is the core function of the city? Yeah, it's like roads, water, sewer. And so maybe Scotty deserves a bigger piece of the pie, or and gosh, I'm blanking on Mike, than they currently get, so that they can. Oh, okay.
That's And that's fine. We can still add this to it. It just would come under the utility fund,
Oh, okay, okay.
which is funded by ratepayers, and it's a much smaller budget that's
Mhm.
typically there.
But yeah, and so I guess that's, yeah, they never have the money to do the basic improvements that the city as a whole, the city infrastructure as a whole, I feel like deserves. So maybe it does need to be on the CIP for like a bigger upgrade.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Put together, and I will, copy the commission.
All right. The Kenai Peninsula Borough Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. Staff report, please.
Sure. So this, let's see. You should have this in your packet, and there we go. Thanks, Jen. So the borough partnered with all the cities in the borough, or within the peninsula, and the purpose is to develop a safe streets and roads for all safety action plan. And so they received a substantial grant. They are in the process of creating this action plan, and they are now trying to engage the public and trying to engage interested folks to gather input and develop the plan. And so at this point, what you have in front of you is a couple different handouts. One is a little explanation of the project and the need for a safety plan. And then secondly is an announcement of the public workshop. And the one in Soldotna is going to be 1 week from today at the River Center from 5 to 7 p.m. You are all invited to attend that meeting and are encouraged. So basically, if you have transportation safety concerns, this would be the place to go and share those concerns with the consultants that the borough has hired. So I do encourage you to attend if it's at all possible. And share your thoughts, and also feel free to pass this around and get this to other folks as well.
Is that just for borough right-of-ways, or is it for like state right-of-ways serving the borough?
It's for all right-of-ways, all safety issues, all transportation-related safety issues in the borough. And so the city is participating because, again, we will be part of this larger plan, and we will then be eligible once we have this complete for federal funds for safety dollars, essentially.
Great, thank you. Any commission comments or questions for staff on this item? Okay, thank you. Moving on to reports. Let's see, no mayor, but city council. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Absolutely, thank you. So, city council's been a little busy. There's been a lot going on, so I will summarize as to not keep us here quite all night. But let me share a couple things that we've done or taken action on, and things that are happening. So, first up, I think at our first meeting of I guess it's last month now of April. The amendments that you put forward regarding some clarifications to decorative ornamental fences, that ordinance was approved and enacted. For riverfront redevelopment, we approved or appropriated funding or approved a contract, forgive me, we did something good to get the consulting bid out on the street. And I think I actually saw that published. So that is, I think, in progress, and certainly a great next step for the riverfront redevelopment plan. And hopefully will give our department a little bit of assistance and resources to be able to go to the next step. A couple ordinances of note. Soldotna Little League. So this is just an interesting one that I wanted to share. So I learned some new things on this. So the ball fields next to the sports center and where the field house is coming in, kind of in between there and Centennial, those are city-owned facilities, but they are not maintained by our Parks and Rec department or by our maintenance department as I assumed they were. So they've actually have a agreement that apparently goes back quite a ways with Soldotna Little League to for they maintain that, and they do a lot with a lot of volunteers and young people and everything else. And they approached the city and went, you know, we've got some significant maintenance issues. Some of those are safety issues, and essentially what that came about for that is an ordinance, and that was passed to donate $50,000 to the Little League. The really neat thing about that ordinance, you know, when you give money to Little League, and of course, as we know, if you don't do it in government, we have to put things out to bid and pay Davis Bacon and do these things. They are able to use volunteer labor to buy materials and things. So I think that top of the list was some dugouts and some other things that are going to get improved. So I think that was a very good win for good use of funds and good leverage of a community organization. So that was approved. Couple other ordinances. We approved an ordinance that was proposed regarding changing tables in city facilities. This came up as some of our facilities maybe do not have changing tables in their restrooms, and some may have only had them in one gender and not the other. So what this ordinance did was only for new or remodeled facilities. So this does not change facilities that are currently in existence, as it requires changing tables to be in all the restrooms and have them accessible. So a very simple thing, but obviously something very good. And I'm sure our field house and that'll probably be the first one. But again, that'll, as these things get remodeled, the intent of that ordinance was to add those. In our last meeting, we had an ordinance and some public discussion, but not a whole lot regarding plastic bags in the city. So as you'll remember, I would like to say 2018 or 2019, a few years ago, the city council enacted basically a plastic bag. Wow, Dad, plastic bag ban. That is hard to say. And the intent was to get rid of the single-use disposable plastic bags within the city. The ordinance, as it was written at that time, essentially gave a thickness measurement of what was a reusable bag versus a disposable bag. And I think what ended up happening is some of the vendors went to thicker bags, and the sponsors of the ordinance went, well, they're still generally being used as single-use disposable bags. So now we have more plastic instead of less. So this ordinance updated that, changed the definitions to include essentially something that can be rewashed, something that truly is used as a reusable bag, as opposed to having a thickness in millimeters and some other technical language. So I think it was a great improvement to the ordinance because it simplified it. And there are still exceptions for things like, you know, meats and vegetables and trash bag, you know, things like that, that you would still be able to use. But the intent, of course, was to not have the plastic waste in our city and to be a good environmental steward. So that passed unanimously. And that implementation, by the way, that it comes into effect January 1st. So there'll be time for the vendors to use their bags and get ready and do all those good things. We had 2 development agreements come before us in our last meeting. So the first one was one on Diane Lane, and this was a agreement for about $48,000, I believe, where some developers are doing a project, and help me on the memory here, but I believe that the intent of that was to extend some of the water and sewer and to do some of that work while this bigger reconstruction work was being done. And I believe that project was estimated to be about $200,000. So the city is assisting with that. Very similar to what you just mentioned, is I think it was a good opportunity while something else was being done to be able to extend some of that infrastructure, or update some of that infrastructure. The other one that was before us was related to the owners of the Whistle Hill development up there on, I guess it's Whistle Hill Loop now, Glebe Loop, that area where you have Addn Camp and some of the other businesses. A little bit of background on this, just to kind of understand how we came to be. So about 2 years ago, some of the landowners in that area approached us because there is the main commercial parcels that we think of there, but there were also some residential and other parcels, and they approached with a SAD request, an assessment district request, to extend water and sewer. And the impetus for that was the soils and some of the land conditions were not particularly conducive to the well and septic that currently existed. Apparently, they'd had quite a few failures that were costly to the landowners, so they requested an assessment district, and they had requested the city cover 75% of the cost of that assessment district, of that improvement. That came before council. Administration requested 50%, as is kind of our normal course of action for those. There was a compromise made at 62.5%, which equaled into somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about $500,000. So that being said, that was taken care of. We learned probably 6 months ago now that the cost estimate came back, and I believe the cost estimate for that project was somewhere now closer to about $900,000. So per code, it came back to council because of the, if it goes more than 10%, then it has to come back before council to be approved. Council did not choose to approve that at that new number. There was a very comprehensive discussion that ensued, and essentially we asked administration to come back with a development agreement. So not a assessment district, but a development agreement similar to this one, where we would fund a portion of that water and sewer main extension project. In the interim, legislation was passed to essentially cancel the assessment district that was in place. Some things had changed regarding land ownership and a few other things, and that was the most appropriate thing. So the request to administration was to bring back an instrument that funded that to $100,000 for the project. The landowners requested a higher dollar amount, and we heard public testimony at our last meeting that $100,000 instrument was probably not going to be conducive to their project. They did not have the balance. I think it ended up now we're at about an $800,000 project. After some discussion, there was a motion to raise that. The motion was not successful, but it was passed at the $100,000 mark. So I bring all that up just to kind of keep you up to date on the history. It's been a little bit of a project, but that's where we're currently at. And these development agreements are, I do have some history to them that we heard a little bit about, but there is some flexibility to it. But that was the instrument chosen, but it was at that lower level, which is consistent with things that have been done in the past. And sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. I could not tell you offhand. I want to say that maybe the SAD had 6 or 7 lots. If John or Jennifer have any memory, but I also think in that since the SAD was proposed, I think some of the ownership changed and consolidated, and that was that. John, do you happen to know, or Jennifer off the top of your head?
So, yeah, initially there were 6 lots. And there is in the initial SAD, there was a fourplex, which is up off Pace in the John Circle. And then there is a single family home. And there is one other business, an insurance company that was been up there, but that's it. So I believe there's 5 housing units, 4 in the fourplex and 1 in the single family home.
The reason I asked the question, I asked him, I said, when do you think we'll get city sewer? We have city water. And he says, who knows? He says, it could be 10 years. Well, this is 15 years ago. But he says, we're only going to bring the city sewer to the front of your yard. And you are then responsible for connecting from the house. Is that the same that would be for this area?
I believe so, because I believe there's a demarcation point for utilities where, yeah, that front of the house is the city's responsibility. And then once you get into your yard or whatever it is, that's the homeowner's responsibility to either install and to maintain. I know
Right.
sometimes those break and
Okay.
it's kind of on us.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So anyway, I give you all that history just so you're a little bit aware of what's happened with the project. I do not know the intention of the property owners with the agreement, so I'm sure we'll get some updates, but especially with a little bit of the discussion about water and sewer tonight. And there is a little bit more, I believe we are going to see some legislation at request. There was a business that opened up in Soldotna that requested city water and sewer connection, but objected to the connection fee and how that was calculated. So I think there is some pending legislation about potentially amending that. And I haven't seen it, so I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I do know it's coming. So those are some things. And just while we're talking about water and sewer, as we had all those discussions, there was a break on Lover's Lane. If you saw that, I drove by and they had it torn up. I think the city thought it was a water main. Luckily, it turned out to be a service line off to a premise that no longer existed. So not nearly as expensive as a water main break, but I will say I'm also a fan from my position of trying to get infrastructure before it's an emergency and making sure those things are kept up to date. So it's always something to be cognizant of. And when we addressed the motion on this Whistle Hill issue, one of the things I did comment that I'll share with you is we want to be cognizant of the ratepayers, because that fund is not the general fund. It is coming from funds that are paid for by you and I and others. And, we already are in scheduled, I think, our second group of a 3 or 4 year schedule where those rates are increasing to try and keep costs with us. And we've had unexpectedly the outfall for the wastewater treatment plant happened recently. Lover's Lane, it is a reminder that there's often unexpected costs when we deal with that as a city. And I think, hopefully, I speak for everybody on the council. I mean, the intention is to hopefully have a fiscal situation where the administration can respond to those things and take care of what needs to be taken care of. I still have more, but I will not get into the details of everything. I've mentioned 2 more items. I'm happy to stand for questions. I know on our next council, we did approve for introduction ordinance that had a donation of $5,000 to carts. We heard from them, and there's been a lot of movement in that organization. So there is an ordinance before us next Wednesday, I believe, to appropriate that. And they're trying to use that for some federal funding match and doing some transportation and some other things here. I do not actually know if they are still getting that. That was controversial, but I do not know the current disposition of that. So apologies for that. The other thing I just want to mention for folks, I don't know if anybody tunes into our meetings, and I know sometimes we're able to have some of you there, but our student representative, Mr. Cassidy, has been with us for 2 school years now. So he actually started, was appointed, I think, in January of 23. And next week will be his last meeting. And I just point that out because it's a great program to have a representative from SoHi there. He's very diligent about keeping us up to date on what's happening with students and some of the young folks. And I certainly hope that program continues. But if you're in the neighborhood, you don't have anything to do, you might come and just wish him well as he ends his time with the city of Soldotna. So that's my highlights, which I feel like were a lot of highlights, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I did have a question about the development agreement precedent. Is it, I heard 50% was normal for the SADs, but for development agreements, seems like it's discretionary. But moving forward, has there been any discussion, especially as we think about other development agreements perhaps that are needed, say on Cahill Drive? What are we wanting to do as a city?
And I don't know if I don't think, and I will ask for help if I overstate here, I don't think we necessarily have a policy or something written about development agreements. What we did here at our last meeting was the figure I gave, $100,000, seems to historically be where they've landed. But Mr. Cornels did mention that they are typically done for very situational things that I don't want to say extraordinary circumstances, but circumstances that may give some specific benefit to the city and for the situation. So, I'll point out to this Diane Lane one I talked about where I think that extension wouldn't necessarily be possible. That infrastructure, if this private development hadn't come forward and it was mutually beneficial to take care of things, that certainly couldn't be done if that were 2 separate projects being funded by solely the city, et cetera. So going forward, I would assume that the right answer to that would be they're evaluated on a case-by-case basis. I believe they'd all require ratification by the council, so they do come up for public hearing. So I did think a little bit about that, as we we're talking about Cahill and some of those things, but I would just emphasize it's very situational, and I think we've done a handful, but not a huge amount as a city in the recent past. But John, if you have anything to add, please let me know. I want to make sure I got that right, but I believe that's kind of what we were told.
I completely agree with what you said. They are very unique. Each one is different. Each one offers different benefits to the city and to the development. And it's important, I believe, for us to be able to have some flexibility in those development agreements as we work with folks to understand what each one can bring to the community. There aren't many development agreements where we've actually shared dollars. I know of 3 now. And so it's not, it hasn't been standardized, the practice of $100,000 or 25% in my mind. It's just, we did the first one, we at $100,000, it ended up costing the city less than 100,000. But again, each one is different. Each one is unique. For example, in the Walgreens one, that developer it was a national developer, and the pockets were deep. And so we were able to leverage quite a bit out of that development and get a lot of city benefit from it with minimal costs. And it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
But there's only been 3 where the city's actually brought money.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but it comes to my mind 3. But that and let you know.
Yeah, that's very informative for me. I would have thought there would have been many. Well, thank you. Does anyone have questions?
I believe that is in progress. They, in fact, the contractor was working on it, and we had to pull them off to go to Lover's Lane to fix that. So I believe that is still in progress, but I do not know when that's scheduled to be done. But I know they're working on it.
I watched them from across the river.
I think it's not
work.
I was about to say, I don't think it's a simple project. This is a fairly complicated thing. And again, that one was unexpected. All of a sudden, we kind of see, we did have a failure.
Any thoughts on Cahill?
So I can't speak obviously for my fellow council members. What I will say on that is I certainly recognize that we don't generally want to have substandard roads. We want to have access to businesses. From a priority standpoint, to me, I want to do the best bang for the buck. What's going to solve the issues or improve issues for the biggest number of people? And I will say it's hard to put that at a higher priority than things like Marydale or potentially Fireweed, things that affect a large number rather than say 3 or 4 or 5 businesses. So nothing against those 3 or 4 or 5 businesses, but when it comes to looking at this after this process takes place, that's mostly what I'm interested in is what's the best use of our dollars. And so I would suspect that Cahill may not rise up to that at this point, but also I don't have all the information yet. So maybe it will if Public Works kind of scratches that out. We'll see what the dollars are and go from there. But that would be my instinct would be, it would be a high dollar project because it's substandard for a very small amount of folks, whereas maybe those same dollars could benefit 4 or 5 times those folks or something more. So that's kind of where I'd be at so far, just listening to your discussion today.
Thanks.
That therefore give the city some interest as well. we'll be getting some money back for property taxes. To improve the value of the property.
I would just comment, I agree with you. I think that as council, we look at that because as we look at developing these things and being friendly to business, we certainly know that property tax, but of course, for something like what was proposed tonight, you know, that will generate sales tax revenue. Sales tax pays for a significant amount of our cities. So it's advantageous to us to obviously encourage business. And I think city council, city administration, planning and zoning, all the boards and commissions do that. I think there's definitely good benefits. And I didn't mention in my kind of a wrap up of Whistle Hill, but that was originally the impetus for that is as that area grows commercially, it's advantageous for us to kick in that funding because everybody needs water and sewer and that allows us to, as was mentioned tonight, grow that way. And of course, circumstances change since then, but it's a good example. So you know, again, I'm actually mentioned this in my comments last meeting. I think the city does a very good job of being friendly to business. You know, there's obviously priorities of different things and all of that, but through some of the programs that especially come out of economic development planning, like storefront improvement and some of those, I think we do a pretty good job of striking that balance. It's not always perfect, and I think there's some more discussions coming up with some other issues that are coming down the pike, but it is something that I think administration and council look at because yeah, healthy revenues is a healthy city and it makes us able to do things. So yeah, I absolutely agree.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, does anybody have any other questions for Dan? Thanks for being at our meeting. I'll move on to Economic Development Planning Director Zarniski. John,
Thank you.
gosh.
I realized that I forgot to mention one thing with regard to the Safe Streets for All information, the safety action plan that's being developed. The consultant, R&M Consulting, who has been hired by the borough, has requested a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they have requested it be at your next meeting, June 5th, if I had that date right. Yep. And so we are going to schedule that for 4:45 p.m. So prior to the start, they said they roughly need a half an hour. That will give them 45 minutes, maybe a little space in between for a break. But what I just want to make sure that for those who are here, that it doesn't provide or create any problems if we do a 4:45 work session.
That works for me.
Great.
And hopefully it works.
Reminder.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
4:45.
I can send you a
Yes.
reminder every week. I have something going on.
Text reminders are real nice, yeah. Oh.
Apart from that, as Dan mentioned, the RFP for the project, Riverfront Project Manager is out, and that will close on May 15th. We are also in the hiring process for my position, and let's see. And that's all I've got. And I apologize. I have to run out the door, so I'm not going to stay for your comments because I have to catch an airplane. So my apologies, but thank you for a good meeting tonight.
Ciao for now.
Thanks, John.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Commissioner Murray, do you have any additional comments?
Well, after a couple months off, it's nice to be back.
We're glad to have you. Commissioner Turner. My only comment is thank you for the motion to postpone. As I think about the likelihood of, I'm eager to hear what our Public Works Director says about the cost of putting that road in. I do think that will bear significantly on our decision, whether it's reasonable to request that of the developer or not. I mean, it seems very unlikely that the city will be able to bump it to the top of the list in time for him to, for his timeline. So I'm just thinking about, you know, with that likely scenario, you know, would we, is there a way that we could propose a development agreement for this special circumstance, or just say, well, unfortunately, we're just gonna have this go forward as is, and the potholes are going to remain, the traffic will increase, and it's just gonna have to be good enough. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the other thing that could come out of it is the recommendation.
Mhm.
And for them to consider that, you know, in their plan, because we think that the need is one of those.
Yeah, and then the speed would have to be 35 there instead of 55. But yeah, I think that's needed.
When it hits 45, I begin to look at the speedometer.
Yeah.
Down the hill.
Yeah, there have been some pretty bad accidents right there, and I think a lower speed is warranted regardless. But anyways, thanks for bearing with us. That was a long discussion and a good one, and I appreciate everybody's brain power. More brains are better than